and Human Services says pharmacies no longer have to even stock abortion drugs, and Miffy manufacturers are fighting the threat of a national telehealth abortion ban. Really don't like this reality where I'm fighting with drug conglomerates. Independent clinics provide most of the abortion care in the U.S. Liz and I talked with President and CEO of Whole Women's Health, Amy Hagstrom Miller, about getting people the abortion care they need, even when your city is Minneapolis and it's under siege. Plus, musician and activist Gwen Levey shows up and we discuss the importance of daily walks, even when you're fighting the good fight. All this coming up on this episode of the Feminist Buzzkills podcast, the show that is totally okay with doping in sports if it means more skiers with hyaluronic acid-induced chubby weeds. I'm Moji and my co-host Liz Winstead is on the road this week at the Michael Shannon and Jason Narducy tour. Yes, that Michael Shannon, the esteemed actor. And he's with prolific rock and roller Jason Narducy. They've started their tour for the third year. This time they celebrate the 40th anniversary of R.E.M's album, Life's Rich Pageant, and will be performing the entire album, plus a bunch of other fan faves all around the country. But that's not the only cool part. They'll be selling these cool-ass posters and donating the proceeds to benefit Abortion Access Front yet again. Yes! They just revealed the poster, and it has this cute as fuck hyena. I'm obsessed. Also, if you can't make it to the show, you can still support AAF and decorate your wall at the same time by buying the poster online. But if you can make it to a show, go! It is such a good time. And who knows, maybe REM will pop in for a cameo again on one of the tour dates because they've done this before. I'm just letting you know I'm not making this up. AF colleagues and friends will be tabling, including me, at some of the stops. So show up, buy a poster, buy a drink, have a great time. At the time of this airing, Denver and Seattle shows will have happened, and so many other dates are already sold out. So if you are interested, if this is even a little bit interesting to you, get moving. Tickets are going fast. The link to purchase your ticket will be in the show notes, as well as a link to purchase a poster if that's all you have capacity for. Also, join our Patreon. If you are not already a Patreon member, listen, you're missing out. So just do it. Not only will you get a cool birthday shout out, you'll also support great content and get cool FBK merch and experiences. All pledges on Patreon support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. You can pledge at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills. All right, it is time to get things moving. So, mifepristone attacks come from all sides, literally from the feds to the states. It is relentless. In the dark days of 2022, when the Dobbs decision came down and the constitutional right to abortion was removed, the Biden administration just jumped into action and they were trying a bunch of things. And one of the things that they did was clarify for pharmacies that they had to carry mifepristone and misoprostol. Those are the two drugs that are in the abortion medication regimen. And they also added to this guidance that methotrexate needed to be carried. And that is a medication that is often used to end ectopic pregnancies. It's also a drug that is used for rheumatoid arthritis and lupus because drugs generally have multiple uses. And this is why it's really bad when we individually try to move them out of the market. And the Biden administration clarified that pharmacies cannot deny people these medications if they've been prescribed to them by their healthcare providers. And in case you don't know this, ectopic pregnancies are life-threatening. It's a pregnancy that takes place outside of a uterus. And so it could be in a fallopian tube. It could be in other parts of the body of the abdominal cavity. And if it continues, it can rupture and cause loss of fertility and definitely death. Methotrexate is also a medication that is used for rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. So this is a medication that needs to be available for people dealing with autoimmune disorders and a wealth of things. Well, the Trump administration decided this week that this direction can just be chucked out the window. So this is a big deal, and it could lead to pharmacies from abortion hostile states just removing themselves by the abortion conversation altogether by simply being unprepared to meet the demand if it shows up. And that's kind of like saying, oh, I don't want to go snorkeling on vacation, so I'm just going to leave my snorkeling gear at home. So then when I get to the thing, even if I want to, it's not there. That's probably a terrible comparison because snorkeling is not at all like needing health care, but it's actually so much worse. So this is bad. And it can be a significant blow for abortion access for vulnerable people, especially in states like, I don't know, Louisiana, right? And I say Louisiana because the Louisiana Attorney General is so deep in her anti-mifepristone circle jerk that the sleeping giants of pharmaceutical companies have realized that they finally need to wake up and defend our access or defend their profits, which is fine, right? Anything to give us a little bit of hope. So earlier this month, Denko Laboratories and Gen Bio Pro, both manufacturers mifepristone, both the brand name and the generic, filed motions to intervene on a case that has asked a Trump-nominated judge to issue a nationwide injunction on telehealth abortion. Both Denko and Gen Bio Pro emphasized that mifepristone's safe. It's science-backed, it's time-backed. There have been so many safety studies. The review that went in from the FDA was careful, deliberate, slow, and backed up by the experience people have had with abortion medication. We really need these antis to stop ignoring the science. So the next hearing on this case will be February 24th. Obviously, we'll keep you posted on what happened, but just to give some context of how this can hurt people, approximately 15,000 people a month in states with abortion bans alone access care through telehealth. That's monthly. That's not the whole year. So the effect of banning telehealth abortion would be huge for the forced birth movement. Obviously, they're all in. But we here at FBK, we're all in for defending and uplifting clinics, and that is where our focus lies. So while Planned Parenthood has the brand name and the biggest target on their back from conservatives, indie clinics continue to provide the most care to abortion seekers. In 2025, last year, indie clinics provided 58% of abortion care and all of the care people received later in pregnancy. Independent clinics receive less support and are at a heightened risk of closure, but this allows them to also be really responsive to their community needs and pivot quickly. Speaking of indie clinics, Liz and I sat down with the president and CEO of Whole Women's Health, and we talked about how her team is using their experience with border control at a now closed Texas clinic to meet the moment and get care to anyone who needs it in Minnesota as ICE raids continue to decimate and terrorize the community. Please welcome Amy Hagstrom Miller. Amy, thank you for joining us.
Amy, welcome back.
Thank you both so much.
Will you tell us about Whole Women's Health and Whole Women's Health Alliance?
Sure. So Whole Women's Health and Whole Women's Health Alliance, we do lots of things. The primary thing we do is provide fabulous abortion care services. We provide those services in clinics, and we also provide them through the mail with virtual abortion care. We also do stigma eradication, communications work. We kick against the pricks, as we call it, with litigation and advocacy work, all really in the service of doing the best that we can by the patients who need our care.
And Amy, we're so excited to have you here today. And you're sort of the perfect guest because as I have been here in Minnesota during this whole ICE invasion, and you are somebody who's from Minnesota who provides in-clinic care and virtual care in Minnesota, it was really super important for us to expand out on the kind of resources that people need here and talk to you about the fabulous resources that you are providing for folks here. So you're from Minnesota. You've had a clinic presence here in the Twin Cities for 14 years. And you're always pivoting. And this ICE invasion has really had you take really strong precautions to keep your clinic here in Bloomington, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, as safe as you possibly can from ICE. For folks who are feeling unsafe but would like to come for an in-clinic abortion, let folks know the precautions that you have taken to keep people safe.
So we have been working to educate the community and educate our staff about ICE for quite some time. As you know, we used to have a clinic in the Texas-Mexico border in McAllen during the last Trump administration. And unfortunately, ICE and Border Patrol has been ramped up and really challenging for the people we serve for a long time. It's really off the chain in Minnesota right now. We have a majority of women of color on our staff, and the majority of people we serve are women of color. And so this is affecting our team, the service team and the providers, as well as the people we're trying to serve. And we're right outside of Minneapolis. We have our origins actually in downtown Minneapolis. And then when we were forced to move out of downtown Minneapolis because they sold our building. And so the closest we could get was Bloomington, which is just like about a mile and a half away. And We are open in the clinic, and the staff are really well trained to be aware and screening and watching anything suspicious. Unfortunately, as abortion providers, we're really used to that in general. We have security systems in the clinic. We have buzz locks and cameras and panic buttons and all that kind of stuff already. And so we're really well positioned to use those systems here to be sure that there's nobody allowed in who we don't want there, and who aren't there to support our patients. So that's, I think, comforting for the people who are coming for in-person abortion care services. We are still offering that care up to 20 weeks. And have been seeing patients pretty much this whole time. Our services have been disrupted. There's been a few times where the majority of our staff didn't feel safe coming in, and so we had to close. We also closed clinic in solidarity for the big rally in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, and we've needed to sort of adjust our services a little bit so that we can be sure all the staff can be there and be safe, and the patients can arrive and be safe. And thank goodness, knock on wood, we haven't had any problems on site with ICE coming into the clinic. A lot of the folks in our building also have signs up in their windows letting people know, ICE is not welcome here. We also have clinic escorts out on the street, being sure that patients know where to go and help them get into the building. So that's been really comforting.
I'm so glad you sort of brought up, we've moved into the invasion of Minnesota right now. And I'm not there, but Liz, of course, keeps us informed
Yeah.
on what's happening and what she sees and what makes it through the news and social media. We see it looks terrifying. And you touched a little bit on this, the toll that it's taking on staff as well. But if you can speak to them, can you talk about ways that you make sure that your staff is able to show up? Because, you hear people are being stopped on the street, and
Yeah.
you said here
Yeah.
that your staff is primarily women of color, and that seems to be the key indicator of who
Yeah.
they choose to attack.
Yeah. So I was just in Minnesota this last week, and I'm going back next week, in part because I wanted to be with the team. And like Liz said, I'm from there. I grew up in Minnesota. I also went to college in Minnesota. I have tons of friends and family in lots of different areas, right? And so this is affecting so many people in the community. And at the same point, our staff, I wanted to just be with them in person and see how are people, what are their faces looking like, what kind of stress are they holding, how are the patients coming in, and had the opportunity to really talk to everyone on the team, as well as the patients and the vendors. We had a locksmith come in, we had a water delivery guy come in, and I was just asking everybody, like, how has it been for you here? Have you been stopped? What was it like for you? And a couple of the delivery guys actually had been stopped and were really candid, talking a little bit about what happened to them. And everyone, to a person, is carrying their papers with them, like we're in a different country. Whether they have a passport or they don't, or they have, birth certificate or citizenship, that's just terrifying. The sort of stress that people are living under your house. And so we've been, trying to figure out how to navigate different staff makeup because of that. We don't have our RN, and we don't have these people every single day. And the staff have just really come together, and it was great to work with them on site because they're just a great team, looking out for each other and comforting not only each other, but the patient. A lot of the patients are, like I said, also people of color. And I had when I was counseling this past week, I had a couple that came from, a few hours into Wisconsin. I had another couple that came all the way from Minot, North Dakota, who were people of color, who he was working on the base. It just makes me pissed that they have to drive 8 hours for an abortion when they're serving our country. And I couldn't insert an IUD for her afterward because she can't use her TRICARE at an abortion clinic.
What?
And God, just makes me crazy, But these are the multiple levels that people are navigating, like just the sort of multiple levels of like insanity. This couple drove all this way, and they were afraid to come into the cities, right? They had to come into the cities because abortion's banned in North Dakota, and they had to come all this way to get the abortion they needed. But then they're like, taking on a whole different safety risk as a Latina couple coming all the way into the cities, super afraid they're going to be profiled, etc. So I have a staff person also helping us do training, who lives in South Texas, who used to work in our clinic in McAllen and has stayed on with Whole Woman's Health since then, and has been an expert trainer that we kind of, fly to our clinics all over the country. And, I had a pretty intense conversation with her about, are you sure you feel safe enough to come to Minnesota at this time as a brown Hispanic person from South Texas. And part of her was like, Amy, we've been dealing with ice forever.
No, this is
like,
new ice.
not this kind of ice, like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
isn't like border checkpoint in
City under siege
ice.
ice.
This is like, very different. Yeah, so we just talked through those things. Like, she's like, I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to stay at a hotel that's really close to the clinic. I'm only going to order Uber Eats, and, I'm not going to go anywhere. And, if I don't feel safe, I'll take an Uber, or I'll have, we just had to make multiple backup plans. I'll have a staff person, a white lady staff person. I was like, I'm a white lady who's going to be there next week. I'm going to come pick you up and drive you around. If I'll be your chauffeur, but just that kind of partnership, but also that kind of level of planning and thinking, in addition to what we normally are just doing to provide abortion care services. We're one of only 2 clinics left in the Twin Cities that provide abortion care services. It's just us and Planned Parenthood. And so there's that as well. People who are housebound, people who are afraid to go to work, whose income has been shifted, because they can't go to work, or they're afraid to leave their house. Their need for abortion and contraception is skyrocketed.
Yeah, I want to get to that, Amy. And I just want to, before I get to that question, just for those who maybe geography isn't their first language, Minnesota has been an abortion haven, and North Dakota, South Dakota, total abortion bans, Iowa, 6-week ban. And then you have Wisconsin, where the 2 clinics are in eastern Wisconsin, in Milwaukee and in Madison. And so, to have your haven crumble on top of no one should have to travel, that's really hard. But I want to follow up on what you just said now, because ICE has been 2 months into this invasion here in Minnesota, into this occupation. So that's 2 months of people living in fear. That's 2 months of people not wanting to leave their homes, not able to work. And 2 months is key to this conversation, because that's often the time when many people discover they're pregnant, right? And they assess the world they're living in to find out if that world they're living in is compatible with pregnancy and parenting.
Right. And so, and we learned this also multiple times in our lives, but we learned this during the pandemic, like during the pandemic, when people are housebound, they can't go out. Like, not only does their need for healthcare increase, and sometimes people who aren't in safe relationships, their safety is compromised, and pregnancy compounds that. Unplanned pregnancy really puts people at even more risk. But we find that also when people are housebound, they're like, what else is there to do, right? So people get pregnant. And I think we have to realize that happens. It happens, when there's a snowstorm. It happens, it's just what people do.
But I mean, it's also not a great time. Like, of course, what do people do when they're home alone, right? So some people who are not alone have fun things to do.
Right.
But this isn't like a place where this is not necessarily a great situation to actually endure pregnancy.
No. Or start a family in this culture at this time. People are like, I don't want to have children. Look at the world's on fire. My people are being targeted. They're being snatched. Like, this is terrifying,
And Amy, I think that it's important to also talk about how much, and I have to fully disclose that I'm on the board of Whole Women's Health Minnesota, and I'm so proud, but how much y'all help somebody with costs and finances, and that you take Medicaid. So talk to people about all the ways that if they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know that I even have the means to have an abortion, that Whole Women's Health is there.
Yeah. So we take all commercial insurance, Aetna, Blue Cross, United, all that stuff. We also accept Medicaid. And a lot of people think that you can't use Medicaid anymore for an abortion because of that bad, ugly bill where Planned Parenthood got sort of pushed out of the Medicaid system. Independent providers are still able to accept Medicaid. And so we do take Medicaid for abortion services in Minnesota. Minnesota, people call it MinCare, not just Medicaid. And we are able to accept Medicaid and insurance in both our virtual care program, so for pills by mail, as well as the in-clinic abortion care. And then we also have robust access to funding. So if people are a self-pay patient, either uninsured or underinsured, we can provide funding through abortion funds. We have the Stigma Relief Fund, which is Whole Women's Health abortion fund, but we work with the Justice Fund. We work with Our Justice, who's doing great work on the ground in Minnesota. and we can get funding to support people's ability to pay if they can't afford and they don't have insurance.
Amy, I think a really important thing to tell folks who need abortion care in Minnesota right now, but feel afraid to go out with everything that's happening with ICE, how they can access virtual care from Whole Women's Health.
Sure. We have a virtual care program where we deliver abortion medication to people's homes. We do that 24/7, but it is available asynchronously, which means people can contact us safely through a patient portal and communicate directly with the provider, or they can go on video if they prefer, and we can get those abortion pills to people so they don't have to leave their homes.
And oftentimes you can get those to folks with 24 to 48 hours, right?
Correct. It's a really quick turnaround. The online pharmacy mails the pills in a FedEx. We usually use FedEx, a little package that has both sets of pills and a pregnancy test and some medication that helps them and some nice cards and things, instructions from us. It all comes in a little home pack.
It's really important for folks to know, in the large pullout of all the ways people are going to need mutual aid and going to need services in this time, you got to talk about pregnancy services also, and how you want to deal in this time with needing abortion care. We talked about it during COVID. This is 8 times worse, but with the same kind of care and safety precautions that we're putting up. So thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's so incredible. And, I wanted to go back a little bit to something that you touched on, and that is how abortion provision has been under attack by lawless thugs since the history of abortion, with very help from elected officials sometimes, or from law enforcement, quite frankly. Y'all kind of invented, we have to have each other, we have to protect each other, and we have to protect our patients for real.
Yeah.
So I would love if you could share how you have personally experienced defending patients from these extremists, and how those experiences have not only helped you meet this moment, but what you could offer to those who are out in the streets now defending their neighbors against ICE.
Yeah. I'm so proud of Minnesotans right now. It's like this weird thing where it's like, oh my God, they're hunting people in our community. And it's like one of the worst things I've ever seen in our country, and also one of the best things I've ever seen in our country, as the citizens and the community and the civic engagement in Minnesota has always been so deep, but it's just so great for the whole country to see this at this point. It's very much of the fabric of who I am, and I think who you are, and who many, many people I know from Minnesota are. And so this is one of the reasons I started in abortion care in the first place, is that I come to the work from a human rights framework, from the framework that people shouldn't be screamed at and harassed and yelled at on the way into the clinic. I come to the work as somebody who was raised a Christian, who's just like, that's not the Bible that I read, wouldn't be screaming at people like this, And how can we not be tolerant of this domestic terrorism that has been targeting people who seek abortion for decades, like you described? You've got to realize that they're out to scare you, right? They're out to diminish your spirit and take your joy, right? And that to me is one of the things we cannot hand over to them, right? Their terrorism is all about, like, you don't know when they're going to pop out. You don't know when you're going to get pulled over. You don't know when, I'm constantly looking, every place I go, I always find all the exits. I look at all the doorways. It's part of my life as an abortion provider, but it's also part of like what happens when you stand up against bad guys too. And so I think a lot of people in our community now see this, like, at first you're scared to blow the whistle, or, in the community, or you're scared to like go up to somebody. And then you're like, wait a minute, you're the one in the wrong, not us, not me. I'm doing justice here and trying to ensure people have their rights, and they have dignity, and they have respect. And that is what we abortion providers have been doing for decades. And there's a lot in common with the people that are rising up to push back against this hatred and this indignity. When I got off the plane, on last week, I went right to the clinic, and there was these freaking protesters there. And they were all these, like, all 3 of them, there was only 3, but they were all these older white men. And I was like, really, right now in Minneapolis, you're still here? Like,
You have time?
You're screaming at me right now? I was just like, and you're screaming at the patients who are coming into the clinic? Like, really? And it just seemed like what are you doing with yourself that this is like what you choose to do every day, right? And
That this is your number one issue right now
right,
in Minneapolis,
right,
in this moment right now,
right.
is wild.
I couldn't believe it. And, thank goodness we still had our patient escorts were there. And they've been doing this work, not unlike the community we're seeing in Minneapolis, pushing back against the ICE people. Clinic escorts have been doing similar work, being a buffer between the people who are being targeted and the people who are doing the targeting, right? And just making sure that they can be there and legal observers and witnessing what's happening and documenting what's happening and, just trying to be sure that laws are upheld and as much as they can and that people are safe. And so I think there's a lot of through lines. I want to just say that just because I have experience with it, I've been targeted in my home. I've been targeted in my neighborhood. I've had letters with my picture going out all over the place calling me a serial killer. Like, it doesn't make it okay, even though it's something you get used to, right? I don't think any of us should get used to it, right? And this is partly why I was glad to join you today and why I was glad to see what you posted even this morning on Instagram, just like they're still here. Right? Because I think our media cycle, after a while, you're like, oh, whatever. Like, it's not a hot thing. Like, what? You're going to not pay attention to ICE doing violence because they haven't, like, shot anybody in a few weeks? Like, are you kidding me? Like,
Right.
And I think they're still everywhere, and they just changed whoever they put in charge, but the tactics are still there. And the stories we're hearing from what people are going through, both the people who are standing up on behalf of others and the people who are getting abducted, it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying.
It's horrifying to see. It's horrifying to watch. It's horrifying to just hear people talk about that experience.
Right.
What fortifies you and what gives you the resilience it takes to continue to do this work?
Oh, my cup was so filled this week because I got to actually talk directly to patients, because now my job is like to make sure everything runs really well and that we have enough fundraising and it's like removed, right? And that fills my cup more than anything. Like, just getting in the mix with the staff and talking to the patients. And I have all of these great stories now of this teenage couple that came from this place and this place and this couple that came. I mean, it was just, and this mom and like her daughter and like, I just met so many wonderful people who I have their individual stories now. And that, to me, I'm a part of their story. They're a part of my story. And that, to me, is what abortion care is. You're there with somebody at a big moment in their life and you're serving witness to them. I answer their questions. I support them. I help them understand what's going to happen. I help them figure out, what they want to do afterward. And it's just such a great engagement. It's such a great connection on such a deep level with others. And it completely and totally fills my cup.
I feel so lucky for anybody that gets to get abortion care at your clinics. I had one time, I'll never forget this. I was talking to a doctor who said to me, oftentimes the patients I see, their abortions are not supported. And oftentimes from the time they find out they're pregnant until the time they get to me, no one has been kind to them. And so to know that somebody goes through that sometimes, and that they get to end up in your counseling room and in your giant heart and capable hands, that's what fills me up every day. I'll tell you that, lady. So
yeah,
thank you so much for your incredible work and for your steadfast commitment through your own personal safety and everything else to understand that the happiness of communities and the thriving of people is goal number one if you call yourself a Christian, turns out.
Yeah. Right. And shout out to the staff on the ground. I mean, that clinic staff in Minnesota, they've been through a lot this year, from the murder of Melissa Hortman and her husband, and they're terrified. On that day, our clinic was open. They were just so terrified about that assassin and where he was going. And then to have, just from George Floyd to all the way to Alex Preddy, like just all of this, just a mile or two from where the clinic is and from where they live. And it's really been amazing to see them navigate it and still be there, present for the patients, working to support each other. It's amazing.
Awesome. Well, Amy, we're going to put all of the links to how folks can access virtual care if they don't feel safe coming out, and also just reminding folks the safety of going, if you wanted to get services in clinic at Whole Women's Health, that they're taking all the precautions they can to keep you safe doing that too. So Amy, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being a beacon when it just seems like there aren't a lot.
Thank you, Moji. Thank you, Liz. Thanks for your work.
So we just heard how Whole Women's Health Clinic in Minnesota is persevering through so much right now. And we want to send them a little extra love through AAF's mutual aid program called Adopt a Clinic. Adopt a Clinic is a great way for the public to directly support independent clinics, abortion funds, clinic escort groups, and patients by ordering much needed items from their wish lists. So let's send Whole Women's Health of Minnesota their wish list items like gift cards for patients, self-care items, and menstrual products. Whole Women's Health telehealth services are available in 10 states, but if you need virtual care, especially in Minnesota, because you're afraid to leave your house, we'll put the link in show notes so you can learn more. As always, these stories and info will be in the show notes, and you can find the best, most up-to-the-minute resources on accessing abortion care and funding for your care on our website, aafront.org. Our Charlie chatbot on the bottom right will walk anyone, anywhere in the country through their options and resources for abortion. We do this show because this info is not given enough attention in the media, so help us spread the word. Show us some love by liking, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating. Every single bit helps us reach more listeners. Each week, we dive through the bowels of the internet doing a misogynistic colonoscopy to find the worst comments that politicians, preachers, and men in the wild have said about abortion, sex, or gender. This week, broadcaster Andrew Wilson steps up to the plate.
How old are you, like 50?
Well, no, I'm younger than you, probably. How old are you?
I'm 21. 22, sorry.
Oh, okay. That accounts for the stupidity. No,
Nice,
I'm
Andrew.
41.
Nice.
41.
41.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think nothing wrong with you if you wanted to go by UC Santa Barbara right now and,
So what would be wrong with me dating an 18-year-old woman who wanted to date me? Do you think 41-year-old women are going to be, like, let's say I wanted children. Don't you think I should date younger if I wanted to have a lot of children?
Date an 18-year-old to have children?
Well, you're going to be able to give me the most amount of children, right?
Oh my gosh. This is disgusting. So, by his logic, 22 is young enough to be stupid, but 18 is old enough to date? Ew, like 18 plus 18 isn't even 40. How did he, at 41, at his big age, feel like this is okay? It is so embarrassing that he thinks this is appropriate. I think it's really clear that he doesn't actually think women are people, that he thinks women are just brood mares who will give them as many kids as they can starting at 18, or bang maids. I don't know. What is he going to talk about with them? Because I'm flustered by words like looks maxing and mogging. And imagine sitting down across from someone that you were interested in romantically and sexually, and that being the conversation you're having over dinner. There's a name for 41-year-old men who hang around colleges looking for dates. I think that word is creep. I think that would be applicable. I'm disgusted. All the showers for me after listening to that. Gross. So you would think there's no way to segue from that douchebag to our next wonderful guest, but we'll get there. She's a progressive national rocker, activist, and co-founder of the Rise Above Justice movement, whose mission is to support SA survivors. We love talented people who use their own experiences and platform to make joyful trouble. Please welcome Gwen Levey. Gwen, thank you for joining us on the pod this week.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on this podcast and to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. So you are a country music artist who lives in Tennessee, which is not a genre or state really known for its liberal bent. What made you look at all of the styles of music that you could possibly do, and then you were like, nope, what I'm going to do is make more progressive music, but in this genre?
Yeah, so I would say my music falls under the country music umbrella, and my older music for sure goes more into that country music genre, but I would consider myself now more of a crossover artist just with the new music I'm putting out. But I think I kind of fell into country music just having moved to Nashville from college. I started writing, co-writing with people here, and the main genre is predominantly country music. So it kind of just happened, but I was always told growing up, oh, you could sing country music. My big influence in country music, I should say mainstream country music, were the Chicks. So they were very outspoken about President Bush back in the day, and then they basically got canceled from country music. Country music is a genre where you can tell the truth. It started as anti-establishment music, but it has been taken over by this very mainstream MAGA movement, as progressive as I've been in my songwriting, doors have been open for me, but they've also been closed on me.
That I think is actually the concern that I would think of if I was a musician and I was like, "Oh, I want to make more progressive music in a country space." It just seems like that's a space that, and I know it's changing, right? And I know we're seeing increasingly more diversity, but it does seem like it's one where they're like, why don't you just, sit down and maybe shut up a little more?
Yeah, literally, like, "Shut up and sing" is what I'm told all the time. I was always writing music that was different and writing topics that really matter to me, but when Roe v. Wade was overturned, I couldn't not say something, and up until then, my music I had a song that was called "All the Weed I Need," so I was, kind of going outside the lines there, but, like, not pushing it too much, but with Barefoot and Pregnant, which is my pro-choice country anthem, that kinda just completely changed everything and put me into that more progressive music category. I am proud of that because I didn't even blink when it came to writing the song because being a survivor of both childhood and adult sexual abuse, like, I know what it's like to have something happen to your body that is out of your control, and to force people to give birth is just another form of that. We are one of the deepest, reddest states there is, and to get up there on stage and sing a song like Barefoot and Pregnant and be openly pro-choice in the country music world was a risk, but for me, like, I didn't even think about it. I just knew it was the right thing to do.
And I love that you wrote this in the wake of the Dobbs decision at the basically the ending of Roe v. Wade, but it also seems that in the past couple weeks it's resurfaced, and I just wish that it felt less relevant, but it actually really feels super relevant at this moment.
Yeah, I would say every single day it becomes more of a reality for women and girls in this country, and it's sad and it's heartbreaking because I wrote this song knowing it was the truth and knowing it was reality, or I should say it's I wrote it as satire, right? And the music video is satire, but seeing everything that's happening today, it's just completely heartbreaking, and I wish it wasn't as true as it is.
You resurfaced it because the Heritage Foundation did their Project 2026, which includes basically a whole plan to push women and any marginalized groups back a generation or two or three. And as I was watching the video for Barefoot and Pregnant, I was like, did they just look at this video and say, "Ooh, ideas"? Like, that's what it feels like, that they were like, "Oh, this is great. Let's do this."
And I think people do think that this was made by the Heritage Foundation. They think was created by them. It could have been created by
It's
them.
a trad wife nightmare.
It is. It really is. It's interesting, even with Barefoot and Pregnant, I wrote a sequel, basically song to Barefoot and Pregnant called Don't Have to Be, which is about the trad wife movement. I don't have to be a wife unless I want to be, unless I choose it. And it's the same thing with, the anything having to do with being pro-choice is just letting people have that choice. And the Heritage Foundation is one of the most corrupt organizations that are coming directly for our rights, as you said, like all marginalized people. And unless you're, straight, cisgender, white guy, white
Christian.
man, Christian man, I think we all need to be very alarmed by what's happening. And it's another reason I enjoy your podcast so much, because you bring to light these issues, and also Abortion Access Front as well. It's so important we have organizations like yours that keep speaking out, just as it's important we have artists and people in the public eye who keep speaking out. And I would say every single day I see more and more people speaking out, which gives me hope, but also is a little infuriating because you're like, well, where were you? But at least
I mean, I think, I've been at Abortion Access Front for about 10 years, and we're, as an organization, we're just a little bit older than that. And I feel like when I started, people would speak in the movement like, "Oh, Roe v. Wade, like, we have to be careful, like, let's plan for life after Roe." And I was like, it took me a while working here to realize that that was a reality that we were in fact marching towards. It's actually a little insane to see how close we are to this horror, and how bad it's gotten, and how every time I think it's gotten as bad as it could, it gets worse. And again, that's one of the things I love about the work that I do, that at least I feel like I'm doing something. At least I'm talking about it. At least we're surfacing stories. We're platforming people who have things to say. We're reminding people that, like, we don't have to endure this, that we can continue to fight back, which I see you still do with your music. I really loved, when I was researching about you, that you basically looked at right at the time in 2024 when we were all reeling from recognizing that this country does not trust women, this country does not trust people of color, but they do trust and support convicted predators. Well, you founded an organization called Rise Above Justice Movement to speak to survivors. What were your goals when you started this initiative, and what is the work that you do now? And having passed the 1 year mark, can you discuss some accomplishments that you're really, really proud of?
Yeah, so Zachary Mallory founded the organization August 2024, and we connected literally less than a month after that. And then I became a co-founder. And it's really been me and Zachary and Amelia Jones, another co-founder, who have really been building this movement of survivors. It's even bigger than survivors because we talk about so many things relating to human rights. So October 2024, we ended up having this historic Zoom call that came after a full-page New York Times ad that was taken out, where we all signed our names saying, Donald Trump is a proven abuser who has been in office, but we're really worried about him getting into office again. And unfortunately, he was reelected. So the Zoom call was such a big part of our movement because we had Trump survivors who had never told their stories that were telling their stories about how Donald Trump assaulted them. We also had Harvey Weinstein survivors as well. And then now our podcast, the Rise Above Justice Movement podcast, we just interviewed a lawyer who's represented many of the Epstein survivors. And we've also talked to the Epstein survivors. It really has to do with justice for human beings in general, just letting us all be able to make the choices about ourselves, our lives, our bodies. It's so important to our organization and uplifting survivor voices and also reporting the news that the mainstream media unfortunately is not covered. I'm really honored and excited to be a part of it because like you said, Moji, it gives you purpose, right? It makes you feel like you're doing something to give back to the world, especially during a time when as people are waking up, there's more and more people that are reaching out like, what can I do? What can I do
Yeah.
now? I'm glad that I can sleep at night knowing that I've been moving, helping to move that, hopefully that needle forward, with just telling my survivor story and co-founding Rise Above Justice Movement and the music I'm making just to try to help push society forward to honestly heal from everything we've been through, everything our country has never addressed either. We really need to address these issues.
It feels like part of why things get worse is because I love that you went back to addressing the issues. It feels like part of why things get worse is that we don't address issues and then they compound and then they expand to affect other people. I think we really see this in sort of the attacks on trans people, right? It started, I think, a lot of what propelled our current conservative movement into power is direct attacks on trans people. But we see that those direct attacks on trans people have ricochet and rippling effects for women, for all marginalized people. And it's just they choose a super vulnerable population to start, but it doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't. We saw this in Afghanistan too. A lot of men were fine with women's rights being taken away there, but then once their rights started being taken away, they were like, oh my gosh, why didn't we should have spoken up sooner? But
Exactly.
it is so sad to see, and this is just a pattern, right? A theme where a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't affect me, so I'm not even going to pay attention. And, there's things I didn't know growing up that I'm learning, I'm educating myself about. So, we're all human, right? We can't know everything, but I think it's really what you do once you have that information that shows your character and also your morality, as we're seeing.
I mean, we all do have a moment where we learn and grow. And I would actually love if you could tell maybe an epiphany moment for you, a moment where you were like, oh, I thought of the world in one way. And then I looked up and I was like, oh my God, it's so much different.
Oh man. So I have Jewish heritage and I grew up always being taught one way about Israel, right? And I didn't know everything that was happening in Palestine, like the history of what happened. And so once I was informed and started educating myself, I think I had this epiphany moment where it was like, wow, I didn't even, we're always told Israel is like created because Jewish people and horrible things happened to us in the Holocaust and throughout history, right? But then suddenly we're becoming the oppressor, and that's just not what we're taught. It's a lot of indoctrination that we're seeing any sort of organized religion, right?
That's a good one. I also feel like that's an epiphany that a lot of us have had way, way later than you'd think we should have,
Yeah.
right? Like not just you, a lot of us. So the world is dark, but like we have to stay resilient and we have to stay the course, and we also have to like feed ourselves to continue doing this work, to continue to speaking out, to stay strong, and to support the people in our community. So I'd just like to pivot quickly to self-care. What do you do, or some practices you have that kind of keep you in the fight and centered and grounded?
I love this question because I have struggled with that, especially with the release of the Epstein files. It's retriggering for survivors everywhere. And I can't imagine what it's like for these amazing Epstein survivors that are having to be re-traumatized every day. And so what I do, I make sure I wake up and I drink water, I have breakfast, and I try to take my dog on a walk right away before I get on my phone, before I get on the computer, try to work out and keep that kind of routine because for a long time, I wasn't putting myself first. I wasn't putting my self-care first because I was putting an album out. I was helping organize Rise Above Justice movement. I was doing all of these things except giving back to myself. And so important to take care of yourself and also going to therapy. You know, therapy is a part of my routine as well. And it just really is so needed during this time when there's a lot going on and it's easy to get all jumbled up in here. And also it can take a toll on the body. It's so important to put yourself first every morning so that you can give back to the work that you're doing.
I remind myself, not as often as I should, but I do often, that rest is revolutionary and that like the go, go, go actually serves no one, right?
Yes.
And it's such a tough lesson to learn, but as like us busy North Americans, but like there's so many, like we do need to stop and take a breath and walk our dogs and not look at the phone for a little while. So I love that you have this routine for yourself. And I think it's important that we share this with people as we talk about the work that we do, also the ways that we nourish ourselves. So it's been incredible talking to you, Gwen.
Oh, same
Um,
here, Moji.
can you tell our listeners how to find you, how to support the work you do, how they can follow you on social media, what you have going on, anything that you'd like people to know about you?
Find me at gwenleveyandthebreakdown.com and also at Gwen Levey Music on all social media platforms, as well as at Rise Above Justice Movement. So y'all can find us there. And supporting my music really helps, and also helping support what Rise Above Justice Movement, what we're doing there, is so important as well. And bringing light to all the survivors, because we're technically all survivors of something, right? And right now, I think we're survivors of what's happening in this administration. And it's nice to have a network and a community of people who are like-minded and really see the world in a very similar way and just want, good things to happen to everybody because everyone deserves that.
We all do. Thank you so much, Gwen, for joining me. I'm so happy to spend this time with you.
Same here. Thank you.
That's our show. Just me by myself doing a show. It's done. Oh my God. Thanks for listening. And thanks again to Amy Hagstrom Miller. And we'll put all the links to Whole Woman's Health telehealth services in our show notes. Did I make you smarter? Did I make you laugh today? If so, show the pod some love by liking, subscribing, and giving it a 5-star rating. And if you really want to go the extra mile, just join our Patreon. Just join. You'll support great content and you'll get cool merch and experiences. And remember, all of our pledges support this pod and all of our activism at Abortion Access Front. You can pledge at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills. Plus, Abortion Access Front brings the news and info every day. You can stay connected with us on social media at Abortion Front across all platforms. With your help, we can get more people to learn about this assault on abortion access. And now that we've got you informed, let's get you activated. You can check out our awesome Operation Save Abortion trainings at operationsaveabortion.com. You can get an abortion activist glow up and learn about all the areas abortion providers and patients need your help. And while you're there, poke around our super cool activist calendar. It's full of local and national actions and educational opportunities so you can dive right in. Again, all of that is at operationsaveabortion.com. And if you want even more ways to get involved, you can sign up to volunteer. We really need you. You go to our website, aafront.org, fill out the volunteer form, and let's figure it out together. Don't forget to join us next week. The sweet feminist herself, Becca Ray Tucker, will talk about what inspired her new book, The Abortion Companion. And comedian, actor, best-selling author, founder of Tiny Reparations Books, and hilarious social media follow, Phoebe Robinson will bring the much-needed belly laughs. This episode of FBK is edited by Pauly Reese and is produced by Jen Moon for Abortion Access Front. Thank you for joining me. Bye.
Feminist Buzzkills, the podcast from Abortion Access Front. New episodes drop Friday. When BS is poppin', we pop off. And if you want to support our podcast and all the work of Abortion Access Front, like, subscribe, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/feministbuzzkills.